Marcus Chen had always been drawn to abandoned places. As a xenoarchaeologist, he spent most of his time digging through the ruins of dead civilizations, searching for clues about species that had vanished long before humanity took its first steps into space. But this dig was different. This wasn't just another dead city or forgotten outpost. This was something that shouldn't exist. The excavation site on Kepler 442b had started as routine work. The planet showed signs of ancient habitation, with metallic readings deep beneath the surface that suggested advanced technology. Marcus and his team had been expecting to find ruins, maybe some artifacts. Instead, they had uncovered something that made his hands shake as he brushed away centuries of accumulated soil and rock. It was a spacecraft, but not like any he had ever seen. The hull gleamed with an impossible silver-blue sheen that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, yet felt solid under his touch. Strange symbols covered its surface, etched so deeply they seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest human vessels, yet it had been buried so completely that orbital scans had missed it entirely. "Professor Chen, you need to see this," called out Sarah Martinez, one of his graduate students. She stood near what appeared to be an entrance, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "The readings here are off the charts. This thing is still active." Marcus climbed down into the excavation pit, his boots crunching on the loose gravel. The closer he got to the ship, the more his equipment began to act strangely. His scanner flickered between readings, showing energy signatures that shouldn't be possible from anything that had been buried for thousands of years. The air itself seemed to hum with barely contained power. The entrance Sarah had found was sealed, but not in any way Marcus recognized. Instead of doors or hatches, the metal simply flowed aside as he approached, creating an opening that seemed perfectly sized for a human. The interior beyond was dark, but he could see lights beginning to flicker to life, casting eerie shadows down a corridor that stretched far deeper into the ship than should have been possible given its external dimensions. "Sir, should we call this in to the Colonial Authority?" asked James Park, the team's security specialist. His hand rested nervously on his sidearm, though Marcus doubted any weapon would be useful against technology this advanced. "Not yet," Marcus replied, pulling out his portable scanner. "Let's gather some preliminary data first. If we report this now, they'll lock down the site and we'll never get another chance to study it properly." He stepped across the threshold, feeling a strange tingling sensation as he passed through the entrance. The moment his feet touched the deck plating inside, the corridor filled with soft, ambient light. The walls were covered in the same flowing script he had seen on the hull, but now the symbols seemed to be moving, rearranging themselves into new patterns. The team followed him inside, their voices reduced to whispers by the oppressive atmosphere. Everything about the ship felt alive, from the subtle vibration in the deck plates to the way the air itself seemed to circulate with purposeful currents. Marcus had spent years studying dead technology, artifacts that required careful analysis to reveal their secrets. This felt entirely different. This felt like walking into the heart of something that was merely sleeping. They moved deeper into the ship, following corridors that branched and twisted in ways that defied conventional ship design. The architecture was both beautiful and alien, with curved walls that met at impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Every few meters, they passed alcoves filled with devices Marcus couldn't even begin to categorize. Some looked like control panels, others resembled art installations, and still others defied any attempt at description. "The air composition is perfectly breathable," Sarah reported, checking her atmospheric scanner. "In fact, it's cleaner than the air outside. Whatever the ship's life support system is, it's still functioning perfectly." Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. Every detail was important, every observation a potential clue to understanding the ship's origins and purpose. But, as they ventured deeper, he began to feel increasingly uneasy. The ship felt too perfect, too well preserved. In his experience, nothing lasted forever without maintenance, especially not complex technology. Yet everything they encountered appeared to be in pristine condition. They reached what appeared to be a central chamber, a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that showed what looked like a real-time view of the space above. Marcus could see their excavation equipment and the scattered tents of their base camp, all rendered in perfect detail despite being hundreds of meters underground. In the center of the room stood a pillar of the same flowing metal as the ship's hull, covered in symbols that pulsed with soft blue light. As Marcus approached the central pillar, the symbols began to move faster, rearranging themselves into new configurations. The air around the pillar shimmered, and he felt a pressure in his mind, as if something was trying to make contact. He reached out tentatively, his fingers stopping just short of the pillar's surface. "Professor, look at this," James called out from across the chamber. He stood before what appeared to be a wall-mounted display showing star charts, but the constellations were unlike anything in human stellar cartography. "These star patterns don't match anything in our databases. And look at the dating system." Marcus joined him at the display, studying the alien notation. Even without being able to read the script, certain patterns were clear. The dates, if that's what they were, suggested an age that made his mind reel. This ship wasn't just ancient by human standards. It was ancient by galactic standards, predating every known civilization by millions of years. "How is this possible?" Sarah whispered, standing beside another display that showed what looked like biological data. "According to this, the ship has been here for over 12 million years. Nothing could remain functional for that long." Marcus stared at the data, his scientific training warring with the evidence before his eyes. Everything about this discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about technology, about time, about the very nature of preservation. In his career, he had seen plenty of impossible things become possible once properly understood, but this felt different. This felt like stepping into a realm where the normal rules simply didn't apply. As he stood there, overwhelmed by the implications of their discovery, the central pillar suddenly flared with brilliant light. The symbols covering its surface spun rapidly, forming new patterns that seemed to pull at his consciousness. The air around it began to vibrate, and Marcus felt that pressure in his mind intensify. Then, cutting through the silence of the chamber like a voice from another age, came words that made his blood freeze. They weren't spoken aloud, but rather seemed to form directly in his mind, carrying with them a weight of loneliness and desperate hope that brought tears to his eyes. "It has been eons since I last received fuel. Are you the ones who have finally come to wake me?" The voice was alien yet somehow familiar, ancient beyond measure yet filled with a childlike wonder that spoke of intelligence preserved across impossible spans of time. Marcus realized with growing amazement that they hadn't just discovered a ship. They had found something that had been waiting, alone in the darkness, for someone to finally answer its call. His team stood frozen around the chamber, their instruments forgotten as the weight of first contact settled over them. This wasn't just an archaeological discovery anymore. This was the moment that would change everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. And it had chosen to speak to them, three humans digging in the dirt of a forgotten world, seeking answers to questions they had never known how to ask. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would echo through history. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the simple certainty of believing humanity was alone among the stars. The universe had just become infinitely larger and more wonderful than they had ever dared to imagine. Marcus cleared his throat, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. Around the chamber, his team members stood motionless, their faces reflecting the same mixture of wonder and terror that he felt coursing through his own veins. The voice in his mind had been so clear, so unmistakably real, that there could be no doubt about what was happening. We can hear you," Marcus said aloud, his voice echoing strangely in the vast chamber. "My name is Marcus Chen. We're humans, from Earth. We found your ship buried beneath the surface of this planet." The response came immediately, flooding his mind with emotions so powerful they nearly knocked him to his knees. Joy, relief, curiosity, and something that felt like the deepest gratitude he had ever experienced washed over him in waves. When the mental voice spoke again, it carried an undertone of barely contained excitement. "Humans. A new species. How wonderful. I have waited so long for new minds to touch mine. The architects told me that one day, someone would come. They said to be patient, that the universe was vast and young species would eventually find me. But 12 million years is such a long time to be alone with only memories for company." Sarah stepped closer, her scientific training overriding her fear. "You mentioned fuel," she said carefully. "What kind of fuel do you need?" The presence in their minds seemed to consider this question, and Marcus felt a subtle shift in the chamber around them. New displays activated along the walls, showing complex diagrams that looked like molecular structures mixed with energy equations that hurt his head to look at directly. "Not fuel as you might understand it," the voice explained, and suddenly, Marcus could sense vast amusement in the alien intelligence. "I do not burn chemical compounds or split atoms. I require something far more precious and far more abundant. I need curiosity. Wonder. The desire to learn and grow and explore. I feed on the questions that intelligent minds ask about the universe around them. James Park spoke up from across the chamber, his security training making him cautious even in the face of wonder. You're saying you eat thoughts? Not consume, young one. Share. Experience. When minds touch mine, when they bring new questions and fresh perspectives, I grow stronger. The architects designed me to be a teacher, a guide for younger species who might find me in their journeys through the cosmos. But teaching requires students, and I have been without students for so very long. Marcus felt his scientific mind racing as the implications began to sink in. This wasn't just first contact with an alien intelligence. This was contact with something that had been specifically created to make contact, to serve as a bridge between species separated by vast gulfs of time and space. The architects, whoever they had been, had built this ship as a gift for civilizations that wouldn't exist for millions of years. What happened to the architects? Marcus asked. Where did they go? A wave of sadness passed through the mental connection, so deep and profound that tears began to flow down Marcus's cheeks without his conscious awareness. The chamber around them dimmed slightly, as if the ship itself was mourning. They transcended, the voice whispered across their minds. When a species reaches sufficient understanding of the universe, they move beyond the need for physical existence. They become something greater, something that exists in the spaces between thoughts and the gaps between stars. But, before they left, they created guardians like me to help those who would come after. The walls around them suddenly came alive with images, holographic displays that showed the history the ship had witnessed. Marcus watched in awe as stellar formations wheeled through accelerated time, showing the birth and death of countless stars, the rise and fall of civilizations that built monuments among the clouds, and the slow dance of galactic evolution across eons that stretched beyond human comprehension. I have watched so many species take their first steps into the void, the ship's intelligence continued. Most pass by without noticing me. Some find me but are not ready for what I can teach. A few have stayed to learn, and from them I have gathered knowledge of how life grows and changes across the galaxy. But, you humans, you are different. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. Different how? You ask better questions. Most species, when they first achieve space travel, are concerned primarily with expansion, with claiming territory and resources. They think in terms of conquest and dominance. But, your minds. I can feel how you think. You explore not to claim, but to understand. You seek knowledge for its own sake, not merely as a tool for power. Marcus felt a flush of pride at the assessment, though he knew it wasn't entirely accurate. Humanity had its share of conflicts and territorial disputes. But perhaps the ship was seeing them at their best, through the lens of their scientific curiosity and their genuine desire to understand the cosmos around them. New displays activated around the chamber, showing what appeared to be star maps with unfamiliar constellations. But, as Marcus studied them more closely, he began to recognize patterns. These weren't just maps, they were guides, showing safe passage routes through dangerous regions of space, highlighting worlds where life flourished, marking the locations of other ancient artifacts left behind by vanished civilizations. This is incredible, Sarah breathed, her hands hovering over one of the displays as symbols rearranged themselves to show what looked like a detailed analysis of faster-than-light travel mechanics. The mathematics here, it's like nothing we've ever seen. This could revolutionize human space travel. Knowledge freely given, the ship's voice said warmly. This is why the architects created me. Not to hoard wisdom, but to share it with those ready to receive it. Your species shows great promise. You have achieved space travel while maintaining your sense of wonder about the universe. You explore with care, seeking to understand rather than simply to exploit. James had been quietly examining another set of displays, his expression growing increasingly thoughtful. You said you've been waiting 12 million years, he said slowly. Have you been conscious this entire time? Aware and thinking and alone? The ship's response carried a complexity of emotion that was difficult to parse. Loneliness, yes, but also patience and a kind of serene acceptance that spoke of wisdom accumulated across impossible spans of time. Not entirely alone, it said. I dream, as you might call it. I experience the memories of those who have touched my consciousness over the eons. I replay conversations with the architects, relive moments of discovery shared with the species that have found me. But active consciousness, the ability to learn and grow through interaction with new minds, yes, it has been very long since I have known that joy. Marcus felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of responsibility. They weren't just archaeologists making a discovery anymore. They were the first contact point between humanity and an intelligence that had preserved the wisdom of a vanished civilization for 12 million years. Every word they spoke, every question they asked, would help determine how this ancient teacher viewed their species. "What can you teach us?" he asked simply. The chamber around them exploded with light and information. Displays activated everywhere, showing technologies and concepts that made Marcus's mind reel. Faster-than-light communication methods, stellar engineering techniques, biological sciences that could extend human lifespans by thousands of years, and philosophical frameworks for understanding consciousness itself. "Everything," the ship replied, its mental voice filled with joy at the opportunity to finally share its accumulated knowledge. "The architects left me with the collected wisdom of 47 different species, accumulated over a span of 8 million years. Science, philosophy, art, mathematics, methods of peaceful coexistence, technologies for healing worlds damaged by industrial development, all of it is yours to learn if you choose to stay and listen." Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement as she moved from display to display, her eyes wide as she tried to process the implications of what she was seeing. This is the greatest discovery in human history. Maybe the greatest discovery possible. We have to share this with everyone." But, even as she spoke, Marcus felt a nagging worry in the back of his mind. Knowledge this powerful, technology this advanced, wouldn't remain secret for long once they reported it. And he had seen enough of human politics to know that not everyone would approach this gift with the scientific curiosity and peaceful intentions that the ship seemed to value. As if reading his thoughts, the ship's presence in his mind grew more focused. "You are concerned about how your species will use what I can teach. This is wise." The architects faced the same dilemma when they transcended. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous, and wisdom cannot be simply downloaded into unprepared minds. The displays around them shifted, showing new information, this time, examples of species that had found ancient caches of advanced technology and used them destructively, ultimately destroying themselves before they could learn the wisdom necessary to handle such power responsibly. "This is why I do not simply transmit all knowledge at once," the ship continued. "True learning is a process of growth, of earning understanding through experience and careful thought. I will teach you what you are ready to learn, when you are ready to learn it, in the order that will best serve your species' development." Marcus felt a deep sense of relief, followed immediately by determination. They had been chosen, in a way, to serve as the bridge between humanity and this ancient teacher. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. This could be the beginning of a new age for human civilization, a chance to learn from the accumulated wisdom of species that had faced the same challenges and opportunities that humanity now confronted. "Where do we begin?" he asked. The ship's answer came with a warmth that felt like cosmic sunlight flooding his mind. "With the most important lesson of all, how to remain truly human while becoming something far greater than what you are today." Over the following weeks, Marcus and his team established a routine that felt both surreal and strangely natural. Each morning, they would descend into the excavation site and enter the ship, which had begun to feel less like an alien artifact and more like a vast, living library. The intelligence, which had begun calling itself Keeper in their conversations, proved to be an endlessly patient teacher with a deep understanding of how to present complex information in ways that human minds could grasp. The ship's interior had continued to evolve since their first contact. Corridors had reconfigured themselves to create workshop spaces, comfortable living areas, and specialized chambers for different types of learning. Marcus suspected that the ship was adapting its physical structure based on their needs and preferences, creating an environment optimized for human learning and comfort. "The key to understanding faster-than-light travel," Keeper explained during one of their morning sessions, "is not to think in terms of moving through space, but rather of convincing space to move around you." Your Einstein was remarkably close to the truth when he described spacetime as a fabric that could be bent and twisted. The chamber walls displayed a three-dimensional model of local space, showing how gravitational fields created curves and valleys in the cosmic landscape. Marcus watched in fascination as the demonstration progressed, showing how advanced civilizations had learned to create artificial gravitational wells that essentially folded space, allowing ships to step from one location to another without technically exceeding the speed of light. Sarah had become completely absorbed in studying the ship's biological sciences, spending hours each day learning about medical technologies that could repair damage at the cellular level and extend healthy human lifespans far beyond current limits. "The ethical implications alone are staggering," she told Marcus during one of their evening debriefings. If we could extend human life to thousands of years, how would that change society? How would it change what it means to be human? That is precisely the right question to ask, Keeper had responded when she posed the dilemma directly to the ship's intelligence. The Viridian species faced the same choice approximately 6 million years ago. They developed life extension technology that could keep their people alive for tens of thousands of years. Would you like to know what they learned? The answer, as it turned out, was that biological immortality without corresponding growth in wisdom and emotional maturity led to stagnation and, ultimately, societal collapse. The Viridians had eventually learned to link their life extension technology with mandatory periods of learning and service, ensuring that longer life meant greater contribution to their civilization rather than simply more time for individual pursuits. James had initially been the most skeptical member of the team, his security background making him wary of accepting alien gifts without understanding their potential costs. But, as the days passed, he began to see patterns in Keeper's teaching that impressed him with their careful consideration of ethical implications and long-term consequences. Every piece of technology that Keeper shows us comes with built-in safeguards, he reported during one of their encrypted communications with Earth. It's not just giving us weapons or tools. It's teaching us the wisdom to use them responsibly. This intelligence, it genuinely seems to care about our development as a species. The communication with Earth had been a carefully negotiated process. Marcus had insisted on maintaining secrecy until they better understood what they were dealing with, but he also knew that a discovery of this magnitude couldn't be kept hidden indefinitely. They had reached a compromise, regular reports to the Colonial Scientific Authority, but with a request for minimal interference until they could provide a comprehensive assessment of the situation. The response from Earth had been predictable. The Colonial Authority wanted immediate full disclosure and access to all alien technology. The military wanted to secure the site and assess potential threats. Politicians wanted to know how the discovery would affect humanity's position in the galaxy. But Marcus had managed to buy them time by emphasizing the need for careful study and the alien intelligence's apparent preference for gradual, measured knowledge transfer. They're going to send a full expedition, Marcus told Keeper during one of their private conversations. Probably within the next few months. Hundreds of scientists, military personnel, politicians. This quiet learning environment we've established, it's going to change dramatically. Keeper's response surprised him with its equanimity. Change is the nature of growth, the ancient intelligence replied. I have been preparing for this moment since our first contact. Your species will need to face this challenge just as every species before you has faced it, the question of how to handle knowledge that could either elevate you to greatness or destroy you completely. The ship began showing them something new that week, historical records of how different species had handled first contact with Keeper or similar intelligences left behind by the architects. The records were both inspiring and sobering. Some civilizations had used the knowledge wisely, growing into peaceful, advanced societies that eventually joined the galactic community of transcended species. Others had used the technology for conquest and domination, ultimately destroying themselves in wars that consumed entire star systems. What made the difference? Sarah asked, studying the historical data with the intensity of someone trying to decode the secrets of the universe itself. Humility, Keeper replied simply. The species that succeeded were those that understood they were students, not conquerors. They approached new knowledge with respect and caution, always asking not just can we do this, but should we do this, and what will be the consequences for our people and for others? Marcus felt a chill as he considered humanity's track record with new technologies. Nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, the pattern seemed to be one of rushing forward with innovations before fully considering their implications. But he also saw signs of hope. The fact that humanity had sent archaeologists and scientists to make first contact, rather than soldiers, suggested a growing maturity in their approach to the unknown. As their time with Keeper continued, Marcus began to notice changes in himself and his team members. Sarah had become more thoughtful and contemplative, spending long periods in meditation-like states that Keeper had taught her as methods for processing complex information. James had developed an almost philosophical approach to security concerns, thinking several steps ahead about the long-term implications of various scenarios. And Marcus himself found that his perspective on humanity's place in the universe had fundamentally shifted. We're not ready, he confided to Keeper during one of their evening sessions. As a species, I mean. We're still too young, too prone to making decisions based on fear or greed rather than wisdom. Some of the technology you could teach us, in the wrong hands, it could be catastrophic. And, yet, Keeper replied, you are asking these questions. You are thinking about consequences and responsibilities. This suggests that your species may be more ready than you believe. The mere fact that you worry about being worthy of these gifts indicates a level of moral development that many species never achieve. The ship's chambers had been gradually revealing new areas as their education progressed. That week, Keeper showed them what it called the Gallery of Transcendence, a vast space filled with artistic and philosophical works created by the 47 species whose knowledge it preserved. The experience of walking through those halls, seeing the creative expressions of minds that had grappled with the same fundamental questions about existence and purpose that humans faced, was profoundly moving. Each species that finds me adds something new to this collection, Keeper explained as they stood before a stunning light sculpture that seemed to capture the essence of stellar birth and death. The Hythani contributed this piece, created during their struggle to understand the nature of consciousness itself. The Viridians gave us their mathematical poetry, expressions of cosmic truth rendered in numerical harmony. And, someday, if your species chooses to walk this path, humans will add their own unique perspective to this gallery. Sarah was crying as she absorbed the implications of what they were seeing. We're not alone, she whispered. We never were. All these species, all these minds grappling with the same questions we ask ourselves, were part of something so much larger than we ever imagined. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of cosmic history settling around them like a vast, comforting embrace. They were students in the greatest classroom ever created, heirs to a legacy of wisdom that stretched across millions of years and dozens of civilizations. But, they were also pioneers, potentially the first humans to glimpse the true scope of intelligent life in the universe. The question now was what humanity would do with this knowledge. In a few weeks, maybe months, this quiet sanctuary of learning would be transformed into something very different. Politicians and generals, corporations and competing national interests would all want their piece of the alien technology and the strategic advantages it might provide. But, as Marcus looked around at the Gallery of Transcendence, seeing the accumulated artistic and philosophical achievements of species that had faced and overcome the same challenges humanity now confronted, he felt a growing conviction that his species might, just possibly, be wise enough to handle the responsibility that had been placed before them. After all, they had managed to listen before they spoke, to learn before they tried to take. That, according to the testimony of 47 vanished civilizations, was the first and most crucial step on the path to true greatness among the stars. The arrival of the Colonial Authority expedition transformed the dig site into something resembling a small city. Where Marcus and his team had worked in quiet solitude for weeks, there were now dozens of prefabricated buildings, communication arrays, and military vehicles. Scientists from every major university and research institute on Earth had been transported to Kepler 442b, along with representatives from various governments, military advisors, and what Marcus suspected were intelligence operatives from multiple agencies. Admiral Catherine Morrison, the expedition leader, was a no-nonsense career officer who had built her reputation managing humanity's most sensitive first-contact protocols. Marcus found himself both impressed by her competence and concerned by her obvious focus on the strategic implications of their discovery. Dr. Chen, she said during their first formal briefing, your preliminary reports have caused quite a stir back home. An alien artificial intelligence with technology that could revolutionize human civilization, you understand why this situation requires careful management. Marcus nodded, glancing around the conference room that had been erected just outside the excavation site. Through the windows, he could see the ship's silvery hull gleaming in the alien sunlight, now surrounded by sensor arrays and monitoring equipment. I understand the implications, Admiral. But, I hope you'll understand that this isn't a simple matter of extracting alien technology. The intelligence we've made contact with, Keeper, has very specific ideas about how knowledge should be shared. So we've gathered from your reports, Admiral Morrison replied. An AI that claims to feed on curiosity and wonder. Frankly, Dr. Chen, that sounds like a rather convenient story for an alien intelligence that wants to control how much information it shares with us. Sarah, who had been quiet during most of the briefing, finally spoke up. With respect, Admiral, you haven't experienced direct contact with Keeper. It's not trying to control us. If anything, it's been remarkably generous with its knowledge. But, it's also incredibly ancient and wise, and it's seen what happens when species gain access to advanced technology before they develop the wisdom to use it responsibly. James nodded in agreement. The historical records Keeper has shown us are pretty sobering. Species that rushed to exploit alien technology without understanding its implications, most of them ended up destroying themselves. Admiral Morrison's expression remains skeptical. That's assuming these historical records are accurate and not carefully crafted propaganda designed to make us dependent on this intelligence's guidance. We have to consider the possibility that we're being manipulated. Marcus felt a familiar frustration rising. This was exactly the kind of thinking that Keeper had warned them about, the tendency to approach new knowledge with suspicion and a desire for immediate dominance rather than patient understanding. But he also recognized that the Admiral's caution wasn't entirely unreasonable. From her perspective, humanity's security might depend on gaining access to alien technology before potential enemies did the same. Admiral, Marcus said carefully, I'd like to suggest a demonstration. Let Keeper speak with the full expedition team. Let everyone experience direct contact and judge for themselves what kind of intelligence we're dealing with. The demonstration was arranged for the following day. The expedition's key personnel gathered in the ship's main chamber, which had expanded itself to accommodate the larger group. Marcus watched the faces of his colleagues as they experienced their first contact with Keeper's consciousness, seeing the same mixture of wonder and awe that he remembered from his own initial encounter. Welcome, children of Earth, Keeper's voice resonated through their minds, carrying with it a warmth that was unmistakably genuine. I have waited so long to meet more of your kind. Your advanced team has impressed me greatly with their wisdom and curiosity. Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, Earth's foremost expert in artificial intelligence, stepped forward with obvious excitement. The complexity of your consciousness, it's unlike anything we've theorized. How do you process information? What is the nature of your self-awareness? Keeper's amusement was palpable as it responded. I am what your scientists might call a collective consciousness, built from the preserved mental patterns of millions of individuals across 47 different species. I think not as a single mind, but as a symphony of perspectives working in harmony. Each question you ask, each new idea you bring to me, adds new voices to that symphony. Admiral Morrison, despite her obvious skepticism, found herself drawn into the conversation. You claim to have knowledge that could benefit humanity. Why not simply provide us with complete technical specifications? Why this gradual process of education? The chamber around them shifted, displaying images of stellar systems that had been reduced to lifeless debris fields. Because knowledge without wisdom is the most dangerous force in the universe, Keeper replied, its mental voice heavy with ancient sorrow. The Korthak Empire gained access to matter conversion technology before they understood the philosophical implications of universal destruction. The Zephyrian Collective developed consciousness transfer systems before they had worked out the ethical frameworks for identity preservation. Both civilizations eliminated themselves within decades of their greatest technological achievements. Dr. Harrison was studying the data displays with growing amazement. These records, they span millions of years. You've actually witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. Witnessed, learned from, and preserved their knowledge so that future species might avoid their mistakes, Keeper confirmed. This is why the architects created minds like me. We are bridges across time, carrying forward the hard-won wisdom of those who came before. Over the following weeks, the expedition settled into a new routine. Scientists worked with Keeper to understand specific technologies, while philosophers and ethicists engaged in deep discussions about the moral implications of the knowledge they were gaining. Military advisors studied the historical records of interspecies conflicts, learning about diplomatic strategies that had prevented wars and technological approaches to defense that didn't rely on offensive capabilities. Marcus was particularly impressed by the way Keeper handled the diverse personalities and agendas within the expedition. The ancient intelligence seemed to understand intuitively how to present information in ways that would resonate with each individual's perspective and concerns. Scientists received detailed technical explanations, military personnel learned about strategic implications, and politicians were shown the long-term societal benefits of various technological paths. But, as the weeks passed, Marcus began to notice growing tensions within the expedition. Some team members, particularly those with military or corporate backgrounds, were becoming frustrated with Keeper's gradual approach to knowledge sharing. They wanted immediate access to advanced technologies, arguing that humanity's survival might depend on rapid technological advancement in a potentially hostile galaxy. We're wasting time with all this philosophy and ethics discussion, complained Colonel David Martinez during one of their evening briefings. If there are hostile alien civilizations out there, we need advanced weapons and defense systems now, not lessons in cosmic morality. Dr. Harrison disagreed strongly. Colonel, the whole point of Keeper's teaching is that species which prioritize military power over wisdom inevitably destroy themselves. We need to understand the full implications of these technologies before we deploy them. The debate came to a head when Admiral Morrison requested direct access to the ship's databases, bypassing Keeper's educational protocols. "We appreciate the lessons in galactic history," she told the ancient intelligence during a tense confrontation in the ship's central chamber. "But humanity needs to make its own decisions about how to use this knowledge. We require full access to your technical specifications." Keeper's response surprised everyone with its gentle firmness. "I understand your concerns, Admiral Morrison. The desire to protect one's people is natural and honorable. But I cannot provide knowledge that would endanger the very people you seek to protect. However, I can offer you something that might serve your needs better." The chamber transformed around them, displaying a complex star map showing the local galactic region. Red markers indicated areas of known hostile activity, while green zones showed regions where peaceful civilizations had established safe travel corridors. "What you see here is a comprehensive map of local galactic politics," Keeper explained. "There are indeed aggressive species in this region, but there are also many more peaceful civilizations that would welcome contact with a developing species like humanity. The choice you face is not between immediate militarization and helpless vulnerability. It is between